In this part of the lesson, we're going to look at how we can set up Excel and the Visual Basic Editor so that we're ready to start writing some code in the next part of the lesson. As we didn't need to download any files for this session, let's start simply by opening up Excel. Now we're using Excel 2016 through an Office 365 subscription, but it doesn't really matter if you're using an earlier version, you'll still be able to do the same things in Excel 2013 and 2010 and even 2007. We didn't download any files, but all VBA code must be stored in some form of Microsoft Office document. So for Excel, of course, that's going to be some kind of workbook. So let's begin by creating a brand new blank workbook using the handy link here. The next job is to get into the Visual Basic Editor application, which is where we'll be spending most of our time over the duration of this course. There are several ways to open this up, but one useful way is to use an extra tab available to the Excel ribbon called the Developer tab. Now you'll probably notice that the Developer tab isn't available for me just at the moment. By default it isn't displayed. One way to make it available is to simply right-click on any of the existing tabs in the ribbon and then choose Customize the ribbon. On the dialog box that appears, look at the list on the right-hand side and see if you can find the Developer tab, so there should be one box here that's unchecked. So if I simply check that box and then click OK, I'll have a new tab available in the ribbon with lots of useful tools available for working in VBA. The very first button on the Developer tab allows me to open up the Visual Basic Editor application. I could also do the same thing by pressing the keyboard shortcut Alt and F11. Either technique will open up the VB editor, which should appear looking something like this. We can use standard Windows controls to close or minimize, or as I'm going to do now, maximize the window so it fills up the full screen. And to switch back to Excel, I can either click the Excel button in the top left hand corner, or I could have pressed the same keyboard shortcut Alt and F11, or I could have used the standard Windows taskbar, so I can hover over the Excel icon and choose the Excel window or the VB editor to quickly switch between the two. By default, the Visual Basic Editor will display two windows when you first open it. First of all, the Project Explorer sitting in the top left-hand corner of the screen. This shows a list of all of the open Excel workbooks and the VBA project items that belong to them. The more workbooks you open, the more items you'll see in this list. The Properties window at the bottom of that shows you a list of the properties of whichever item you currently have selected, and you can see that as you select different things in the Project Explorer, the list of properties down there changes. Now, if you've either accidentally or deliberately closed down either of these windows, I can do that just by clicking the crosses in the top right hand corner of them, you can bring back any windows using the View menu in the Visual Basic Editor. So to bring back the Project Explorer, I can select that item from the list, or I can press the keyboard shortcut Ctrl and R, and to bring back the Properties window, I can head back to the View menu and either choose Properties window or press F4. Now, before we can start writing any VBA code, we need to create a container within the project in which to store it. The most common type of container in VBA is referred to as a module, and you can insert a module into a project in a couple of different ways. A fairly simple way to do it is to right-click on the project within the Project Explorer, and then choose Insert, followed by Module. You could do the same thing by selecting the project in the Project Explorer, heading to the Insert menu, and then choosing Module from there. The module will appear in a floating window by default in the middle of the VB editor, and again you can use the standard Windows controls to minimize and close it, and as I'm going to do here, maximize it. If you do close down a module, as I'm going to do now by clicking the lower of the two crosses, I can reopen it by double clicking on the module in the Project Explorer window. As you begin to work on larger and more complicated projects, you may find that you want to use multiple modules to better organize your code. You can insert as many modules into a project as you like, and then you can switch between the modules by just double clicking on them to see the code in each one. If you decide that you want to remove a module later on, you can right click on it and choose the remove option. The dialog box that appears asks you if you want to export the module before you remove it. If you simply click the no button, the module will be deleted along with any of the code that it contains. One final thing that you may wish to do before we move on to the next part of the lesson and actually start writing some code is to modify the default font settings of the Visual Basic Editor. You might be able to tell from the size of the text cursor here that the default font size is quite small. So if you wanted to modify that, head to the Tools menu and then choose Options. On the dialog box that appears, you can select the Editor Format tab, and then from there you can modify both the font typeface that's used. So if you don't like Courier New Western, you can select from any of the other standard fonts. You can also change the font size, which is what I'm going to do, so you can hopefully read on my screen a little bit better what I'm typing. I'll bump it up to about 18, I think should be enough. You can also modify the font colours, so you can modify both the forecolor and the background colour of any text. There are several different types of text that you're going to see appear in the Visual Basic Editor, and you'll get a better idea as to what all these do and are for as we progress further through the course. So for now, having just changed the font size, I'm going to click OK, and we're finally ready to move on and actually start writing some code.